Epic Gaming Night is sponsored by Analog Gamer. Check out Analog Gamer for high-quality board game apparel. You can find Epic Gaming Night shirts and much more at analoggamer.com. This is Epic Gaming Night, a podcast about board games and the stories and relationships they create. Welcome to the Epic Gaming Night podcast, a podcast about tabletop games, but mostly board games. I'm your host, Roy Candy, and with me, as always, is Matt.
Hello.
Man.
And Rob.
Hello. Which Rob? That Rob?
No,
Rob?
We have double
You?
Robs on the show tonight because we have a special guest, Rob Daviau. How's it going, man?
It's good. It's going well. How are you?
Pretty good. Tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
My name's Rob Daviau, and I make board games for a living.
What?
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah. Actually, I can... It's weird. I worked for Hasbro for 14 years, so I definitely did it for a living. And then for the past couple years where I've been on my own, I've designed board games, but not quite made a living at it. And now I think I'm going to make a living at it again, which is
I think
nice.
you're going to do well.
Do you think there's any games that you've designed that people may have heard of a little bit? Or
I did Trouble, the one with the Pop-O-Matic bubble for Cars 2.
Cars 2?
Yes.
Yeah. I did
Axis and Allies Pacific.
Does Hasbro have any Twister? Did you make any Twister variants?
I didn't. Let's see. I have done games at Hasbro for Life, Monopoly, Clue. Trivial Pursuit, Axis and Allies, a ton
Wild
of
Horde.
ton of Risk, Wild Horde. That's a deep cut.
Oh, bro.
That's a game that Craig
I got lists.
You got notes. That's a game that Craig Van Ness and I did that was only released in Germany. It's like a hipster game. Like, you've probably never heard of it.
Yeah.
It's on my sheet of paper.
Yeah, it was a trick-taking game. I don't know. I've done a lot of stuff. Star Wars games, Harry Potter games, DVD games, card games, board games.
So is it safe to say that you're the one to blame for all the Monopoly variants?
No. A little, but no.
You're like, my boss kept telling me to make Monopoly, and I continue to make Monopoly.
That's absolutely true. You don't get to pick your projects at Hasbro. They're like, we want another Monopoly variant. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm not making one. No, I remember when Lord of the Rings came out, and the third one came out, and my boss came over, and he was a great guy, still is. Name is Steve Baker, British guy. He did Hero Quest and Battle Masters.
Nice.
And he just held up a piece of paper, a brief, and it said Monopoly Lord of the Rings. And I said, I don't know what's worse, that I have to do this or I didn't see it coming. But the nice thing about Monopoly variants is I did that one in an afternoon, right? Because they're not going to let you change much. Now, a new Risk game, they didn't care. I could change stuff and add rules and take away rules and redraw the map and add dice and, power cards. But Monopoly, you pretty much have to make Monopoly. So
what was the best Monopoly variant that you made?
Monopoly DVD.
Nice.
There was a game. You played a board game with a DVD next to it. This was all the rage like 10 years ago. Remember the game Seen It?
Yeah.
Yeah, Seen It came out, and Hasbro was like, oh, we got to do this. And so we did some Trivial Pursuit with DVDs, and we did a Clue with a DVD and a Monopoly with a DVD. And I did the Clue and the Monopoly. Actually, I may have done them all, or most of them. And I'm really proud still of the Monopoly and the Clue. You probably can't find a DVD player that would work playing them. But the Monopoly one largely works outside of the DVD. It has different buildings you can buy and variable scoring, and it ends in an hour, and it's got some decision making, and I decided to try to modernize Monopoly. And the eight people who bought it really liked it. So, excuse me while I eat cheese. I apologize to the lactose intolerant.
It's all right.
Nice.
You're Rob Daviau. You can do whatever you want.
I wonder
not really.
I wonder if we lost half of our crowd with them listening to you talking about classic board games and them not knowing the other board games you made.
Well, he didn't make Risk, but he's worked on different versions of Risk.
Because
So.
it's funny because like a lot of like sometimes Monopoly is like a dirty word in the hobby board game industry. They're like Monopoly. People just like jump on you. You're like, did you say Monopoly? But everybody's got to start somewhere.
Well, Monopoly is a wonderfully average game that gets too much. Think about it. It's got roll and move. That's a strike.
Oh, my wife loves Monopoly.
It's got auctions. It's got trading. You can do things outside of your turn. It's got short-term and long-term predictions. This was all kind of cutting-edge stuff in the 1930s. Yeah. Now, it hasn't aged well, but the American public still treats it like it's cutting edge.
Right.
So as gamers, where we know we've moved on and have done different stuff, it's hard to hear like how it's the greatest thing. But when you look at it, you go, this was kind of revolutionary for its time, and even now has some interesting pieces, but we've learned that strep throat is killing you, isn't it? It's
so bad.
Yeah, we've kind of moved on from it, but I mean, I think the game of life is a worse game than Monopoly.
Because there's no choices whatsoever.
It is
except for college or not college.
It's college or not college, and
married or single.
And then occasionally, when you get to a split path, you choose which one, but it's always the better. It's like a tactical, real-time decision.
Yeah.
It manages to have no decisions, but a ton of bookkeeping. Like you're constantly doing payday and pay this out. It's just moving money in and out with no decisions. And I'm like, that is far worse than Monopoly, but people hate it far less because it's not still shown as the darling of what board gaming could be.
I think I was listening to an interview from you or maybe someone else that said that Hasbro designs a lot of those like classic games to be gifts. Like they design the game to be a gift for someone. Sometimes they don't even necessarily design it to like necessarily be played a whole lot. They just know that someone's grandma is going to buy it for them.
Well, I'm not the designers at Hasbro always give their heart into making the game the best it can be. But ultimately, and this wasn't me who thought of it, it was, I think, Jay Tummelson from Rio Grande told me about it, but I think he may have heard it from someone else. The main purchaser of a mass market board game is not the player. Like we all go on, I'm like, I want to play this game, and we buy it. And yeah, they're almost always gifts in the mass market. It's a kid going to another birthday party. It is Christmas. It is birthdays. It is summer vacations. It is we're going to the beach house. We're going on a ski trip. It is almost always the purchaser is not the player. And so you just have a different mindset of why the person's buying the game. The person is not buying the game because they've heard of a clever auction mechanic. Right? They're buying the game because they're like, oh, my 7-year-old and my 10-year-old will play this, and I know this brand because it's, let's say, Clue, so I can probably learn the rules pretty quickly, and it'll satisfy a large group of people without a lot of effort. And that doesn't make it bad. It makes it very different. It's not why we play games. So...
Awesome. Well, we're going to get into our huge topic tonight about SeaFall Legacy a little bit after we talk about some of the games that we've been playing. Rob, do you want to start us off? Rob Newman.
Oh, not Daviau? Okay. I got to play, real quick side note, my wife last night just came up to me and was like, bro, do you want to play Splendor? And I was like, oh my gosh, I love you. So, because my wife's not really a big board gamer, but we have played Splendor in the past, and she liked it, and she's studying for a big test, and so she just needed to, like, relax and get away. So I just want to throw that a plug to Splendor. I won't get into that, but it was fun. I played Splendor with my wife last night. But I really want to talk about freaking Ashes: Rise of the Phoenix Born.
I gotta
absolutely love this game. Love this game. And there was a tournament this weekend in Charlotte. And we actually had a pretty decent turnout for the tournament. Thomas did a great job running the thing. I think they're going to have one the first Saturday of every month at that. It's called Your Local Game Store. It was a really nice store. They had a lot of space. They had good snacks. They were near a lot of restaurants, so if you wanted to get stuff. So, shout out to them. But we did an Ashes tournament, and I put my deck together like Friday night at like 10:30, 11 o'clock. And I played with one of the new Phoenix Born. I played with Brennan, who Brennan is actually looks like a male, acts like a male, but he is actually a female. And I learned all this from watching the videos from Isaac when they did their Team Covenant weekend in Tulsa.
Yep.
But anyway, so I had no idea what I was doing. But I built decks before. I played collectible card games before, so I felt comfortable creating a deck. But this wasn't like my fine tooth. I fine tooth this deck since I came back from the tournament. The very first game I played, I really just kind of destroyed my opponent. Again, I was playing Brennan, and in Ashes Rise of the Phoenix Born, you got dice, you got cards. There's a whole just... It's different than any other collectible card game. You guys have heard me talk about it a lot in the past, so I won't get too much into it, but I killed my first opponent. I destroyed. It was really brutal. I felt really good, and I got really cocky. Like, I went out to the car, and I listened to some good music, and I was just like, man, no, you buy me a soda. You buy me a soda.
Were you listening to It's the Best Around?
Yeah, what were you listening to in the car?
No one's ever gonna get you down.
Actually,
DMX.
DMX.
It was not DMX.
Was it like Eminem? Like, you know?
No.
You got one opportunity, one chance, you know?
Right. I do have.
Awesome.
I do have a crazy playlist. It's a mix of everything, but I actually like a lot of classical music.
It was just Adele.
So like, hello.
Hey, I do have Adele on my phone. She is gifted and beautiful and very talented and a really cool chick.
Yep.
So, anyway, besides the music, blasted my second opponent. Brennan has this ability where he can destroy his own units to ping the Phoenixborn. I was doing that, but then bringing my units back. And so the only damage that was done to me was the damage that I did to myself. And then the third opponent, now this guy, really nice guy. I'm not going to say his name or anything like that, but he copied card for card the deck that won the big Tulsa tournament, like the big Plaid Hat official tournament that they did. He just copied that deck.
He told you that, or?
Yeah, he told me right after he killed me. He was like, hey, man, don't get that. I literally copied card for card exactly with that. And I was like,
a net deck, and you just got owned. Should have done your research on how to beat it.
Yeah, well, I was like, I put this together around 10:30 last night. I got him to 1 life. If it would have come to my turn, I would have just played my archer and killed him. Like, he had to kill me. If he didn't kill me, I was going to win the game. And so I felt really good. I got second place, but I got the card at what I wanted. I didn't want to win the playmat anyway because I already have Ash's playmat. And so I got the alternate art for Brennan. But absolutely love Ashes Rise of the Phoenixborn. If you're not playing that game, one, you should buy it for the artwork alone. The artwork is absolutely beautiful and amazing. Second, I love that it's a collectible card game where all the cards I own now are still going to be good in years to come. You know, they don't get phased out like Magic the Gathering and other stuff. So I had a blast. That's what I've been playing.
Awesome. Daviau, what have you been playing, sir?
I can't follow that.
Isaac Vega, you can't follow Isaac Vega's design?
You were so much more epic.
No, because, you know, you told me that you might ask me this, and I was like, uh-oh, what have I been playing?
You're just like, prototypes I can't talk about, man.
Oh, so the thing is, okay, I have to play this prototype and that prototype. When I get people who want to play a board game, I'm always like, hey, I've got a prototype. Can we just play this thing that I got it in my trunk. Why not? Let's just bring it in.
How long do you think it's been since you've played a game that wasn't like a prototype, that was like an actual published board game?
No, I do every couple months.
Gotcha.
Okay.
But I play games every week, but they're my games, or I watch people play games.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about it, and I'm like, what have I been playing? And I'm like, oh, well, this is embarrassing, but I'm proud of it in a way. I've been playing Clash of Clans, and a lot of it.
Nice. Rob will love you.
I'm on Clash of Clans.
Yeah, so my kids, like a year and a half ago, they were like 15 and 11 at the time or something. Yeah. They were playing it. I'm like, all right, show the old man. We were on vacation. And I'm like, this is dumb. Like, why do I have to wait 10 minutes to train my troops? I want to play now. And then I discovered for a guy who works by himself out of his house, it is wonderful. Because if you work in an office, you work for a while. Like, you're like, I'm going to get up and go get some water and talk to someone. Well, I don't have anyone to talk to. So after like 45 minutes or an hour, I think, hey, my army's trained. Yeah. And I pull it up and I find some other person online, and then I shellac them or get shellacked. And then I train a new army and I go on. And basically I'm just trying to build up, and it is a wonderful series of coffee breaks for me.
Nice. You heard it here first, Rob Daviau, addicted to Clash of Clans.
Addiction's a strong term.
Have you put any money into the game, or do you just wait your turn?
I have put in a year and a half,
there we go,
$30 to $40 in, but I'm
Shut up, Rob Daviau. That's too much money. Rob,
I'm sorry. Wait.
Hey, sometimes he likes to
Wait,
support
wait.
content creators
Okay.
who make
How
content.
much did you pay for Ashes?
I paid full. I've paid everything for Ashes, but Ashes is a board game. I don't feel bad. Listen, Clash of Clans. I know you're.
Wait, wait,
I know
wait,
you're
wait,
liquid now.
wait,
I know
wait,
you're-
wait.
So much judgment.
Board game designers deserve to get paid, but digital designers don't get to get paid. What we're getting hung up on is the illusion of free, and you feel like if you pay, you've somehow lost.
Yep.
And
Well, listen.
my decision was, hey, I'm enjoying this game. I'm having a good time. I'll throw them $20.
Here's where it's different for me. If I can hide in a way, I can hide buying a board game, with cash or something like that. There's no receipt, there's no credit check on buying a board game.
Are you
But
buying
when my
like
wife sees that $4.99 charge on iTunes,
So you buy like board games by the dime bag is like what you're saying here. Like on street corners, like
So it's like, hey man,
Absolutely.
you want some of those board games?
come on,
That
I
was
just
exactly-
need some Ashes cards. Come on, just a few, cash only.
That was exactly what he did on International Tabletop Day. He was like, I'm not buying any games this year. You walked out there with like, what, 3?
I bought three.
All right, well, I'm not gonna get into your rationale for hiding your gaming purchases. I don't know you well enough to get into that. But for me, it's a tax deduction.
See, I'm not there
Nice.
yet. I'm not there yet.
Hey,
That is 100% a business expense for research.
absolutely
Nice.
Man, that must be nice.
I do feel the same way. I played a ton of Hearthstone, and like after playing the game free for a while, when they finally came out like with the adventures, and they were like $20 for like all these different cards and stuff like that. It wasn't like really random what you're getting. You knew what you're getting, and I was like, I'll pay $20 for this just to support what Blizzard's doing here, just because I played the game for so many hours and I've enjoyed it. I had no problem spending $20 to do it, and I spent it again when the next adventure came out, just because I'm like, I've played $20 worth of game here. I can justify this purchase.
Yeah, and it took a while for my head to get around. I'm like, just charge me money and I'll buy your game.
Yeah.
This whole like it's free and then you buy in bite size. And I'm a middle-aged guy. I'm like, don't do that to me. It's new and different. And then after like a year or two, I'm like, oh, I kind of see their business model, right? They weed out the casual players and they go deep on the people who are really into it.
Yeah. Awesome. And then some people that don't know how to hold on to their money, they probably just spend it all.
Well, I got a friend who's in the industry, and he was talking about the free-to-play model, and a huge chunk of their money comes from like very rich kids in Brunei or something like that, or somewhere in the Middle East, where they'll play Clash of Clans and spend $20,000 on a weekend.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Right, like that they find those whales and they basically try to get them to like, oh, hey, you can be the number one player at the end of the weekend if you just spend some money. And they're like, okay, because it's not that much money to them.
Have all their walls maxed out when the brand new walls just came out, and those walls are like what, 6 or 7 million gold pieces.
Yeah, we're not going to get into the Clash of
I mean,
Clans.
come on.
Clans
The
economy.
whole new fort maxed out. The update just happened 2 hours
Damn
ago.
them, they're buying victory, which is what they're doing. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Good times. So for Rob Daviau, Clash of Clans, what he's been playing.
I need to get your username before we get off the show.
Nice. Hey, he's not going to play with you because you're a filthy casual who doesn't spend money on the game.
No, he'll probably be able to kill me because he spent money on the game, and I've got this simple, cheap. Like,
$30 over a year and a half.
Yeah, that's not that much.
that's
Yeah.
not that much.
Awesome. So for me, I went to the Cool Mini or Not Expo in Atlanta, which was last weekend, and I played a ton of games there with a lot of awesome other like content creators and podcasters and a bunch of just random cool people. The one game that I really liked a whole lot was a new game that they just kickstarted, and I'm not sure when it's coming out, probably like later on this year, is Masmora, which is like a successor to Arcadia Quest. It's like a lighter, more take thatty dungeon crawl Arcadia Quest, but basically the way it feels to me is like Arcadia Quest mixed with Dracon mixed with Wiz War mixed with King of Tokyo. Which I don't know how to really explain it, but it's got a lot of those sort of mechanics in there. And it's kind of funny because like because it's got tiles that you put out as you move along, and when you run into like a monster or like a specific trap or anything like that, you actually have to stop. And it was kind of funny because the guy was like, it's just like Betrayal at House on the Hill, and I'm like, that is just like Betrayal at House on the Hill. So it's kind of funny. But it just has that whole dungeon crawl, just a bunch of different like fantasy adventurers going down there trying to collect gold and get experience points, and whoever makes it to the experience points that you're playing for the game, I think it's normally 16. Whoever gets to 16 experience points first, everybody else gets the same number of turns, and whoever has the most at that point wins the game. So there's a lot of take that and blasting each other with spells and knocking each other down. And the interesting things about this game is that there are dice that you use to take your actions with, and the mechanic for the dice is very King of Tokyo-ish. So you're rolling the dice, and you can re-roll the dice once, and you're using those to move around. You're using those to try to do combat attacks against the monsters of the game. And the monsters of the game are all on 6-sided dice, and you roll them, and there's different faces. And those show you the attack and defense of the monster, and how much experience they give you if you kill them. There's also separate cards that show you all their special abilities. So you'll have gelatinous cubes that can only be killed with magic, or all sorts of different crazy stuff. It was a very interesting, light little fantasy take that, have fun game. And it wasn't anything heavy at all. I feel like it's a little bit heavier than most family weight games, but as long as you have like a little bit older kids, you could definitely play it with your family. And of course, Cool Mini, the miniatures look great and everything like that. So I had a lot of fun playing that game during the Cool Mini Expo. Have you heard anything about that game, Rob? Or
I don't know which Rob you're talking about, but I read something very briefly about it. Someone sent me an email over the weekend, like, "Hey, have you heard about this?" And now I know a lot more from listening to you. So I had heard of it, but didn't know much about it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Lots of take that in it, because you're playing spells to basically knock your opponents down, and when they're trying to do something cool, you stop them or like counter it and different things like that. It has a lot of reactions that you can play, which give it that Wiz War feel.
I was just gonna say, is it like Wiz War? Because it sounds like Wiz War.
It feels a lot like Wiz War, but it's a little bit lighter. I feel like it'd be easier to get into, because Wiz War, like, the spells are kind of crazy and complicated sometimes, and there's a lot of combos. I don't really see a lot of combos going on with these spells. It's more like just one-time deal to do this thing to screw somebody over. But it's definitely interesting. It's like a lighter version of Wiz War, I would say.
I was gonna say, I saw some of the pictures you posted, and they have like very kind of like chibi style miniatures.
Yeah. That's how all the Arcadia Quest style stuff is. And one of the interesting things I saw is if you have a ton of Arcadia Quests, like they have like kits to let you use all of your Arcadia Quest characters in the Masmorra game, and you can use all your Masmorra characters in your Arcadia Quest game, so that's kind of cool. I wish more companies would have a lot of board game crossovers like that. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I like that that's starting to become a thing, like with Mice and Mystics and Tailfeathers. And
yeah.
It's just something really cool that nods back to a previous game, but also...
And I feel like it encourages fans of that franchise to continue to be fans of that franchise, you know? It's like...
Yeah.
I have Mice and Mystics, and I really want to get Tailfeathers. Like, I don't have my own copy. I've played Rob's copy before. But I really want to get it myself, because I'm like, I can use all these miniatures that I have over there, and there's like a scenario in there that I can bring over. So I just think that stuff's really awesome. So Daviau, get on that. Cross-pollinate your games.
I'm trying. Trust me.
Awesome. So we're gonna have some SeaFall ships in the next season 2 of Pandemic Legacy.
There's gonna be a rift that opens up, and my other game's gonna come in and take over and be like, all about SeaFall. Buy my game.
Nice.
There you go.
Bro, that would be awesome if during SeaFall all of a sudden an orange dump truck just came out of the ocean.
Yeah, I don't own the rights to that anymore. So.
Oh, that would be ridiculous.
I do like that it was a dump truck and they had like hockey sticks with ice skates strapped to them. I don't know if you ever noticed that part.
I did. Yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, Matt, I know you had a wedding thing going on.
Yeah, I didn't play any board games, but I will do a real quick shout out. There was a video game that came out, I think yesterday, the 9th, whatever that was.
That was yesterday.
Yeah. I've put 17 hours into it between yesterday and today.
Well done.
The game's called Stellaris. It's essentially Twilight Imperium on PCP. It's insane. It's just ludicrous. Like you can pick a race and then like pick like what type of government you want and like different like traits and all sorts of crazy stuff about your race. And then you just go out there and then you start in like this kind of home system, like, you know, our solar system is, where you have Earth and Jupiter, you know, all those planets. And then you can kind of colonize what you can and pull resources from other things. And then you start jumping to other systems, and then you slowly find other aliens, and you're just trying to expand and do whatever you want to do. And it's
Explore, expand, exploit. Is there extermination?
Absolutely.
Hype.
That's the one thing. That's the one thing I like is I just today figured out that of the 5 different types of warships you can make, you can do new designs for each of them, and then add different modules to like. So you actually change like the fronts and backs of the ship. So like you might have like a huge component up here and like too small in the back or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's like insane customization on like pretty much everything.
It definitely sounds a lot like I played Masters of Orion a lot and stuff like that. Sounds similar to that, but probably like a newer, updated version of that stuff.
Yeah, it's made by Paradox Interactive. So
nice.
People who would know that are people who probably are already playing Stellaris because they play, you know, like Crusader Kings or Europa Universalis, which are.
Is that on stream? Or
you mean Steam? Yeah,
Steam. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all over the place. But yeah, I bought mine through Steam. It's good.
Awesome. Well, I guess we can go ahead and get into our topic tonight, which is going to be SeaFall Legacy. But before we get into all that, Rob, I know you talked about a lot of the mass market games you've played.
Yeah.
If anybody has gotten to this point and doesn't know who you are, as far as the hobby games side of all that, what are some of the hobby games that you've made?
I have been a designer or co-designer on, let's see if I can do this roughly chronologically, Axis and Allies Pacific, Betrayal at House on the Hill, Risk 2210,
Good game.
Heroescape, which isn't really a hobby game, but a lot of hobby people know it.
Yeah.
It's an awesome game.
A ton of Risk games.
Good games.
Risk, including Risk Legacy, Pandemic Legacy, and the upcoming SeaFall. It's not called SeaFall Legacy. It's SeaFall, a legacy game. Yeah, which is what I named it because when I first left Hasbro, I'm like, can I use the word legacy? Can I not? I'm like, I'll put it down below and not put it in the title. Right, so I left it down there. So it's just SeaFall, which will be, it's in pre-order now on Plaid Hat Games, and it will be out, there'll be some at Gen Con, but it'll be really rolling out like in September.
Nice. And you can check that out just by going to the Plaid Hat Games site, plaidhatgames.com, and then go to like their store.
Yep.
And then it's right there for all to pre-order.
And you can pre-order it, and if you pre-order it through, you can order it wherever you want, right? Like always support your local game store, that's cool.
Definitely.
But if you order it from Plaid Hat, it's not discounted, it's full retail, but instead they will also give you all of the coins that come in the game, not in cardboard, but also in metal. So you'll get a set of metal coins with it for the same price. So it's like a bonus bag of coins.
Boom.
Awesome. So where did the idea of a legacy game come from?
It's funny. I've told the story a number of times, and at the beginning, because it was a confusing story, I shorthanded it, which wasn't entirely accurate. Now I don't remember the actual story, because that's how life works.
Didn't it start with Clue?
It did start with Clue. That I remember. And the actual story isn't as exciting. It is like long and hard to explain. But the reality is there's 2 things that happened. We were doing a brainstorm about Clue, and in this brainstorm we were looking at assumptions about a game. Right? Whenever you're trying to think of anything creative, you start to say, well, does the board have to be on the table? Does the board have to be face up? Does everyone have to see the board? Right? You just start asking these sort of crazy questions. And so we were talking about Clue, and one of the things I said as a joke somewhere in there is, I don't know why they're inviting these people back to dinner. They're all mass murderers. Right? And everyone sort of laughed. And then very shortly thereafter, I said, does the game have to start over completely every time? And my boss, guy I talked about, Steve Baker, kind of gave me a, like, all right, he's a gamer. He's like, wow, hey, hold on a second. And I was like, yeah, that's interesting. So one of the ideas that I pitched to Hasbro was effectively like a Clue legacy. It was like Clue, the usual suspects. Right? So in game 1, if Colonel Mustard did it, he got a rap sheet, and he was more likely to be the criminal, and you would get Nemesis, and you might get like scars and rope, and the rope that was used in the murder like would show up later. And It wasn't really thought out, I will admit that. But at the same time, the Hasbro management that I was pitching it to thought that I had lost my friggin' mind. Right? They're like, okay, that sounds, I don't know what that is. That's a lot, and you're clearly passionate, but thank you. And so I just put it on a back burner for 6 or 9 months. And then we were looking at something to do with Risk, which outside of Wizards of the Coast, which is a completely different division, Risk is the most robust gamer engine that I had to play with. Mm-hmm. Risk and then maybe Clue would be a distant second. And so we were talking about Risk, and I thought, hey, I said to my boss, I'm like, how about that idea where, things change? He's like, yeah. And it was one of like 8 things that we were thinking of doing for Risk. And then as we kept talking about it, it became the thing that we were doing about Risk. And it took me maybe a year and a half to design it, and I had a lot of help. Like Steve Baker, my boss, helped, and Craig Van Ness, who I sat across from, who's my co-designer on Risk 2210 and the main designer on HeroScape. Smart guy, great game designer. Like, he helped me pull this out of the ditch many times as I kept driving in the wrong direction. And I kept saying, like, well, I can't make it permanent. And then I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to. Like, what happens if you do that? And once I sort of committed to it, which horrifies a ton of people, I was like, oh, the stakes really went up, but in a way that was kind of interesting. It's like getting a tattoo or playing poker for money that you can barely afford. Like, all of a sudden, it made your pulse quicken in a way that you knew it wasn't quite pretend. And I was like, I think there's something kind of visceral and adrenaline, about this idea if it's permanent. And many times when doing Risk Legacy at Hasbro, I go to a meeting and there would be production people or liaisons to the Hong Kong factory who were being very nice and doing their job, like, oh, hey, you made a mistake in the stickers because you said permanent, so I changed that to temporary, of course. And I'm like, no, permanent. They're like, yeah, but that means it won't come off the board. I don't think you know what permanent means. I'm like, yeah, no.
Awesome.
Yes, I do. And they're like, what? I'm like, trust me, that's the point. They're like, what? And I had to, like, many times, people like, I fixed that error for you. And then so I probably started in spring of 2009, and it was finished sometime in 2010, maybe 18 months of design and development. Then it came out a year later, and I was convinced that there would be about 5% of the people would love it, 10% would put up with it, and then the other 85% would drum me out of the industry. Right? I'm like, this is kind of like I'm doing permanent stuff, and you're writing on the board, and I put something in the game that tells you not to open it. I'm like, I've lost my frickin' mind. No. But I was having a blast doing it. I'm like, awesome. This is just fun. And I had no idea it would be a success or lead to other successes. But I'm very, very grateful that it did. And now I'm trying to just have fun with new stuff.
It's crazy how just like the permanence of it leads to a lot of like stories that happen just with that group, and like all the inside jokes that are in the game itself, and how the things that it makes like the meta game happen for sure, because like you won last game, it's written right there on the board, you're not going to win this game. So I mean, it's pretty awesome, all the different things that like just it being permanent adds to the game.
Yeah, and it was some armchair psychology, right? And with Risk, which is a very, very angry game, yeah. Right? Like, this is another game which I think was innovative at its time, and it kind of has some flaws now, 57 years later. But Risk can really make people mad, and you sit down to start a game of Risk, and you're not like, oh, hey, it's a brand new game. You're like, hold on, Matt won. Matt always wins, and he takes Africa. And Roy, I can't trust you because you broke your word in 2009 about that game we played.
How'd you know?
Yeah, and so you start playing the game, and you're immediately picking up in a campaign where you left off. And I thought, oh, I'd love it if the game knew that.
Yeah,
right? The game somehow knew what had happened. Like, you could point to it, like, you won, and you did this thing over here, and because you did this thing, I'm still mad at you. And you couldn't get out of it and be like, no, you're misremembering. Yeah. Right? That it was somehow on your permanent record, like school. And there was something, like, really kind of fun about kind of creating this social experiment as you were playing a game.
Nice. It's like, that was my starting area, and you added scars all over the place. Mm-hmm. What are you doing? And then you played the 3 missiles, and everything broke loose.
Yeah, the 3 missiles. Yeah, that was, when I first, and I'm still avoiding spoilers.
Yeah.
But what happens, you open a box when you play 3 missiles at the same time. That used to be when someone rolled 3 6s on an attack, and that was one of the things that I was going wrong. And Craig's like, hey, like, it's too random. You're the designer. Get control back. And so, because you could be in the very first roll of the game, or could it never happen? And so I realized, wow, if you're doing these permanent changes, the player should always be the ones who make that decision, even if they have no idea what happens when they pull the trigger. Right? Like, are we going to do this? We're going to do this. Yeah, I'm going to do this. And you're like, I wish I hadn't done that. And it's like, well,
no, it was amazing.
A lot of the things in Risk Legacy, even more than like Pandemic Legacy, is like there are things you can see the achievements, you know what they are, and it's like, we're going to force this to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to force it to happen. And then you can't go back.
That's exactly what we did.
So I'm still trying to figure out this new, I don't even call it a medium, like this new little tiny subgenre of games, right? It's a mix of role-playing games and episodic TV. And with Risk, it was very much sandbox play, right? Like, here's your world, fight, and when you feel like it, open these things, and it's kind of going to be kind of crazy, and there's no real story. It's very comic booky on purpose. Like, I wasn't, like, if you read the backstory, it's like, we've cloned Earths, and it's like, well, I mean, it's just, it's like, people are like, this is a really bad story. I'm like, yeah, I was trying for like comic books, 1950s, right? Like, just roll with it. And then Pandemic, Matt and I said, can we do something tightly scripted like a summer blockbuster? And how does that feel? And SeaFall, which is coming out, is somewhere in between. Nice. Actually, you will have control over when you go to the next part of the story. But you are incentivized in the game. You get points for doing so. So it's not like where with Risk you don't necessarily win if you open up an envelope. It's just fun to do. And in Pandemic, what we try to do is you've strapped yourself into a ride and you're just off and running. And SeaFall somewhere in between, which is you have a better chance of winning if you do the things that move the story, but there's no obligation. I have seen in many a SeaFall campaign, and I know we're going to talk about that soon, but it's an Age of Sail and there's ships and high seas, just war break out for a game. No one does anything that moves the story forward. It's like, we're just going to have a war for a game, and then we're going to get back to our campaign. And the game will just wait for you. It's fine. It'll hang out.
I love that. Oh my gosh.
Awesome. So, well, do you want to go ahead and get right into it and describe SeaFall to those who might not know what it is?
Yes. SeaFall is a game that I started working on right when I left Hasbro. And I realized last week that it took less time for the United States to get involved and win World War II, or help win World War II, than it took me to design this. By about a month. Right, but to be fair, they threw more people at the problem than I did. But I was
had more cash.
Yeah, they had more money, but I was like, oh, that took a while.
So you didn't take out any get people to take out bonds for your game?
No war bonds. There was no rationing. I had to do it all myself. It took me less time to get a college degree, actually, and I took summers off. So, no, what I was doing is I was growing a business. I was doing Pandemic Legacy, and I was consulting, and I was learning how to design a bigger game. So I made mistakes, and the big thing is not how much time it took, because I think it needed that much time. It's that I announced it way too early.
Gotcha.
And then caused people like Rob to go off to Gen Con way early, and I still feel bad about that. Right? But
I mean, don't feel bad. I had an awesome experience. But I don't Gen Con just to buy SeaFall.
Okay. Okay, now I feel bad again. So
he's been there every year since, waiting to buy SeaFall. He'll be there this year.
This
if
is your
not
year.
There, he's just going to riot.
If it's not there, I am somehow out of the industry in some way, because I don't know what happened. No, SeaFall is, my shorthand is, it's Indiana Jones in the Age of Sail.
Nice.
So you are the leader of a province. There's up to 5 provinces. The game is technically 3 to 5, although I've heard a lot in the past couple weeks of people asking if it would play 2 players, and I haven't tested it. I think the answer is yes. What happens is there's a limited number of resources, so the more provinces that are playing, the more need you have to be player versus player fighting. Because there's just not enough to go around. So I feel like it would work with 2, but you're going to be a little bit more of a Euro engine building race than a swashbuckling adventure. Or you can still attack each other, you just won't be sort of forced into it. So everyone plays a province, and what's different about this from Pandemic and Risk is when you sit down in game 1, you're like, I'm the green province, like that's it. You're the green province for the rest of the campaign.
You don't change?
You do not change.
Gotcha. So with SeaFall, you really need to have a solid group, and you're going to play the same people all the way through.
Yeah, now there are rules like, hey, if someone misses a game, here's how you handle it. If someone gets a couple games in and they're like, I can't commit to this or I don't like it, how to drop out. If someone comes back and says, I'd like to join, how to add them in.
Gotcha.
But this is the first one where it's really like, sit down and play with the same group of people. It is meaty. It is my Lord of the Rings. Like each game is about 2 hours long, and you're going to play about 15 with the same group of people. So take your time. Take a year and a half. Right? Don't do this on a weekend. You'll kill yourself.
Yeah, that's weird. Who does
We'll try, but
stuff
you know.
like that?
Well, there are people. Yeah.
We almost played it through an entire board of Risk Legacy in a weekend. So I've done stupid stuff like that.
It's not stupid. It's just ambitious, I guess.
It was stupid. I mean, we had a blast. We had so much fun. But
Are you still friends with the people?
I am still friends with the people, but that I think was our third board, and the decisions we made on that board, we just got rid of that board because you could tell when we were like super tired and not paying attention, and it was just really dumb decisions.
Yeah.
But a quick question. So, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No, you're not interrupting.
Right.
Yeah, ask what you want.
So you start now. You said when you're the green team, you're the green team. So,
Yep.
You've had a tendency to do this in Risk Legacy and Pandemic Legacy, where you can customize things. Are you green as in just green, that color, or are you using green as in that's your nation, but maybe other components will change outside of that nation?
The second one. You are the leader of a province. So you have a leader.
Yeah.
You have a score, which is fortune, how many fortune tokens you get. You have a reputation. You might have an appellation. Like you might be, your character might be called Newman, right? It might be like Newman the Just or Newman the Wise, right? You might get the something underneath it. Your province will have fields. Those can be increased. You can increase your garrison to prevent yourself from being attacked.
Okay.
There's probably one more that I can't think of right now, but that's about it. So, yeah, and then you have two ships, and your ships have different stats. They have sail and explore and raid and hold. Those are the four values. And at the end of the game, everyone's going to improve permanently one of the stats of their ships. So the green province could eventually become like just have two gunships, but they're slow, and someone else has put it all in sail, and they're like, yeah, if you catch me, you'll shoot me. But I'm just going to be like riding around on the ocean, and someone else has a high explore. They're like, I'm on islands, and I'm checking out what's on the islands. And the rules are up. If you go to the Plaid Hat website, you can read the opening rules, no spoilers. So if what I'm saying you're not quite getting or you're intrigued, you can go read the rules. And then you can also hop over to Board Game Geek, and I will answer any questions to the parts that are fuzzy.
Nice.
Awesome.
I heard from Plaid Hat Games that this game is so good that you will need a poop sock.
Yes.
That sounds like Plaid Hat.
I think
Colby
Colby's the
said
one
that.
said that.
That actually sounds like a Colby phrase.
Yeah, he said that. I made
like-
3 friends listen to that podcast, actually. I was like, bro, he said poop sock. This game is so amazing. We're going to Gen Con to get it this year.
I am very happy with this game. This game has a 430-ish chapter book, like Tales of the Arabian Nights. So at various points, when you complete milestones, when you find an island, when you explore an area, at certain points of the game, you'll go to the chapter book. And sometimes it'll just tell you what happened, but oftentimes it will give you a choice.
That's awesome.
So if you explore
So good.
this island, you will pick something, and you're like, I want, and there's certain restrictions at what you can pick. Like if you, right? But there's a system. But you pick something, you're like, oh, I want entry 10, and you go to entry 10, and then you hear it's written. It's called the Captain's Book. He writes like, I woke up early this morning, and I'll make it up. My crew went out to fields, and the natives were harassing us, and my choice is, do I just leave because I don't want to take the time to like bother with them, or do I fight to make a real statement that we won't be trifled with? And then you have to make a decision as the captain as to how you handle this dilemma.
And
then
sometimes those decisions can actually affect the game for everyone, or
most of the time it affects just you, but it can affect it permanently.
that's crazy. Like it could make like an island hostile or something crazy. Like
Oh
that.
yeah. There's something in the game called enmity. First of all, SeaFall has a lot of ridiculously big words. It's got appellation, it's got enmity, it's got. As I was doing it, finally I just gave up. I'm like, this is an SAT prep game.
That's fine.
Does it have Apple apps?
What's that?
Stop.
Nothing.
Moving on. There are tokens in the game called enmity tokens, and every province starts out with 8, and you get your 8 at the beginning of the game. And if you do something where you're a jerk, you have to leave an enmity token with the person who you were a jerk with.
Nice.
So if you raid someone, like if you go to an island and they're like, we have iron for sale, and you're like, I don't want to buy your iron, I'm just taking it. And you raid it, provided you get a good enough dice roll and everything like that. You may take some damage, you may not. You just take the iron because retail's for suckers. And then you
Yeah.
and then you leave one of your enmity tokens on the place that was selling iron, which does two things. One, for the rest of the year, which is like 6 rounds of play. Until winter, no one can buy iron or sell it there because you burned it down. And 2, if you go to raid them again, it's going to be much tougher to raid them. Or if you go, hey, sorry about that thing where we raided you, but we'd like to buy something now, it costs more for you.
Nice.
So they're like, oh, for you, iron costs 3, but for you, jerkface, it costs 4. And
Nice.
if you run out of enmity, because you only have 8 tokens, you can't do anything in the game which would cause enmity. So you can only be a jerk to other players for so long before you just run out. And because it's a legacy game, at the end of the game, if you're not careful, some to all of your enmity will become permanent stickers. So you will start the next game, and they're like, yeah, we remember you a couple years ago when you stole that iron and burned down this whole village. Yeah, it still costs extra for you, and we're still on defense.
That is awesome.
It was awesome.
So, and it takes a while for this enmity to fade away. Either what happens is someone else will be a jerk and they'll overwrite your stickers, or at the end of the game, there's some things you can do to kind of be like sorry and cross them out and be like, kind of appease them. Or I've seen plenty of people, they just in one game go whole hog and just destroy an island, and then they're like, I'm not going back for 8 more games. Like it's just done.
It was
That
so
unsaid
bad.
to me.
Like, but I did win that game because I robbed them blind, and
That'll be Roy.
now I'm done.
That'll be Roy.
Wrecked him.
That'll be like the one time you're like, yeah, I'm just gonna keep pillaging this place, and then like big storm breaks out, and you're like, I gotta land here, and you just get there, and everybody's like, hey, buddy, remember us? And you're like,
Yeah.
oh no.
And there's an event deck that causes different things. There's a evolving event deck. So you start out the game, and there's 6 event cards, and there's 1 per round in a year because there's 6 rounds in a year. But every time you do a milestone, which is a significant thing that gives you extra points and causes major changes in the world, it also brings in a new event card into the deck and sometimes takes them out. So I'll make something up. If you went and you raided a temple on an island, an event card might go in where now there's hostile priests who are raiding you, and if like you have enmity with that island, they attack your ships on the sea.
That's awesome.
So because you do certain things, you'll get permanent changes on the board, and then there'll be new event cards that will come out and come at you until they're dealt with. So you've got this constantly evolving event deck based on the actions of the players.
It's crazy how much like theme you have poured into this game, like with the storybook and all the different stuff. Like it's super exciting because like here at Epic Gaming Night, we're like super into like thematic Ameritrash like dice chucking games. So I'm
there is you can chuck dice in this. Yeah, there are custom dice, and the way the game works is there are 4 guilds, and on your turn you pick one and they do something for you. So there's 2 guilds. The Merchant Guild and the Builders Guild, where there's no luck. So if you got people who are into Euro games, I know I'm not talking to that crowd right here, but like I don't really like luck. You can win the game by being a merchant and a builder, and you can just plan out your logical path. Not every game. Sometimes the way the world is, you might be like, this is a game of high adventure. I'm not going to trade this game. Then there are 2 guilds, the Military Guild and the Explorers Guild, which use dice and dice pools. So for people who like to roll dice, the nice thing about rolling dice is if you succeed, that glory can never be taken from you. Whereas if you build a building, you have the glory and it's perfectly safe, but it can be burned down. So do you take the risk in the dice pool, or do you take the risk in the fact that your enmity can be stolen? I mean, your glory can be stolen or burned down. So I tried to do something for everyone. We'll see if it works.
That sounds super interesting.
Yeah, I got a lot going on in this. It is not a lightweight game. I sound like, I'm kind of getting into games and I heard of it. I'm going to get SeaFall. I'm like, no. Start with Pandemic Legacy. Start with some other things. Kind of work your way up to this. There is a prologue game that you you have to play. Like, it's not an optional, like, I'm really good with games, we're going to skip it because it introduces story and it kind of lets you know what's going on, where you have no permanent consequences. There's no permanent enmity. You can just be a jerk. Whoever wins doesn't get the bonuses for winning. Like, but you can be like, oh, I get it. I see how this works. Okay, let's get going. And then you start the campaign with game one.
Awesome. Well, SeaFall sounds super awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about the struggle of like designing and developing it?
Yes, I always said if I wrote a book about the design of it, I would call it Adrift, the SeaFall story. So I made so many obvious in retrospect design mistakes. It's like I walked out of Hasbro like, I've been doing this 14 years. I did something clever and different with Risk Legacy. I did big games and little games. I know how to design games. No, I still got to make all the same mistakes you make when you're your own boss. Which is more is more, bigger is better. I can, I was like, I left Hasbro like, I want to make all of the great games that are in me at once. And so SeaFall was huge. Like, it was bloated and there were too many rules, which may have worked if it wasn't a legacy game.
Gotcha.
Like, it may have been like, oh, wow, this is a 2.5-hour epic adventure and there's a lot in it. And, I don't think it might not have been Mage Knight or something like that, but, like a really rich big game. Mm-hmm. But you take that and then you try to make it change from game to game. It's like, let's start with the biggest thing possible and then make it bigger.
Right.
I mean, games are lasting like 4.5 hours, and by game 5 there was a runaway leader problem that couldn't be solved, and I discovered the more I simplified it, the better the game got. And then it was this real. And in the meantime, I designed Pandemic Legacy with Matt Leacock and learned a lot. I brought to the table stuff I had learned, and then I took away stuff I had learned to go finish SeaFall. And what I discovered is if you start a legacy game with a thematic but relatively simple game, then you have a lot of places to grow.
Nice.
And with Pandemic is not a deep game. SeaFall is more like heavier than that. Risk is not a deep game. But once I got SeaFall down to being like, you should be able to play the first game and go, I got it. You may not be efficient. It's about an action efficiency. You may be like, oh, yeah, I was a couple turns out of line, and I realized I could have taken more risk, but it's not that complicated. Then I had finally the room to add stuff and grow. And then I had all the pieces in place. There are people who probably played the first playtest like 2.5 years ago who would play this and say, oh, yeah, just about everything I played is in there, the pieces and the story beats and what you're doing. But it went from the clunkiest, heaviest game possible to something just better. Right, and easier. And I had that aha moment like a year and a half ago, like where I thought I was done. And I had a friend play it who is a gamer, and she had played Risk Legacy, and she was doing it, and she got halfway through, and she's like, here are the things I don't know what's going on. And she just kind of listed all these little micro fussy things that I had that I thought were just invaluable and could not be changed. And then after she said that, I went back and I'm like, what if I cut these all in half and simplify this to almost like, in my mind, cartoony simplicity? Mm-hmm. And then I brought it back to a new group and they're like, this is great. And then I brought it back to an old group and they're like, oh, this is much better. Why weren't we here before? And I was just afraid that simple somehow meant I was going back to my days of Candyland. Gotcha. Right? So it was, I had to go through my little journey of being my own self-editor and running my business. And quite honestly, there were times, because I was starting my own business, I may not have touched it for 3 or 4 months because I had bills to pay and I was doing consulting jobs and I was doing other projects. And so it was slow because I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't have the time to do it. So if I could start it now, it wouldn't be 3.5 years. It would be 2 year and a half. It would still be long. It's a big game.
That's awesome.
So, and there are things hidden in it. I can't wait till people find the stuff that's in there. You open this box, you open that box, you go to this entry. Hopefully it all works. All comes together.
How long does it take you to go through and simply develop all of the different things that can it's insane to me to think of like a board game that has a lot of sort of event triggers and stuff how like video games have, because
Yeah.
video games, it's simply a matter of programming. So it's just like, oh, okay, I just go in, I write out what I want, and I say this is like the deck, like this is how it triggers. But like you have to physically go in and make physical components and then different things. Like how much I just don't understand. I can't wrap my head around how like ludicrous an undertaking it is to have like all of these boxes and modules and all the crazy stuff that you have.
Yeah, I wish I could synthesize and say how I do it and how easy it is. It's sort of this very organic process. I mean, Matt and I and this is not a big secret, are working on season 2 of Pandemic Legacy. So I've been paying attention a little bit more to our process to be able to articulate this. And what we tend to do is work on mechanisms and mechanics and ideas, so we want people to do, and then think of the story. And when we get stuck with one, we go back and forth. And then we try to think of, well, how do we want people to interact? Should it be like a choice? Should it just happen to them? Should it be a consequence? Should it be something that they're seeking? Right? Should it be a goal? Do they know about the goal? Is it an accident? Like, it's very narratively driven, like what incentivizes people. And then we get it all wrong.
Okay.
And then, oh, that was too much at once. Oh, people hated that. Oh, people liked it when they got it, but they wondered why it wasn't a bigger deal, that they should have gone for it. With SeaFall, yeah, I mean, I don't want to have dead air here while I stare off into space for 90 seconds trying to remember 3.5 years, but it went through a lot of different processes, but I always knew that I wanted milestones or key moments to be recorded. And when people say like, oh, what's the hardest thing you had to throw away in a game? And for Risk Legacy, I'm like, I didn't throw away anything. Did you see what I put in there? I put everything in there, right? Like that.
That's awesome.
That was unedited craziness. And with Pandemic Legacy, I don't remember offhand. There were things we got wrong that we simplified, but I don't remember having to cut a darling. The one with SeaFall that I still am sad that I couldn't get to work was originally around the outside of the whole board was going to be a timeline that was going to start like in 1500. And when you did these milestones or events, you wrote them on the timeline, like the sinking of this island was discovered. So you could look back and have a living history. And it was great. It was doing exactly what I wanted of creating this living history, but it ultimately wasn't doing what I wanted in many other ways and took up a ton of real estate. So I had to like move away from that. Gotcha. So eventually I realized that the milestones were a good way to incentivize people to do big things, because in SeaFall you get one glory for everyday things. You explore something, you get a glory. You raid something, you get a glory. You build something, you get a glory. You buy a treasure, at least at the beginning, you get 1 or 2 glory. And so I wanted a way to get big things like that. You had macro plans, and I realized milestones kind of satisfied that. Like, okay, a raid is 1 glory, but raiding the hardest thing on the board might be worth 4. And so that led me to the idea of, oh, well, if you're doing something monumentous and getting a lot of glory, then there probably should be some historical record of that. Right? Yeah. So it's like, it's not just, oh, we had a skirmish off the coast. We had this epic battle, right? So that would be recorded in history. So that leads to the captain's book. And then I realized that some of them are even more monumentous than others, and that would lead to the next box being opened. And so they're actually marked in the game. It says unlock on the side. Like, if you do this, you're unlocking one of the boxes. You don't necessarily know which one, but you've got an idea that, okay, we're ready to go to the next section of this story. And you could just sit down and look at it and be like, that's my goal this game. I don't care if I win. I'm opening that. But even if you knew what you were doing, even if you're like, I'm going to do it, I think I calculated the fastest you could do it. Like, if everyone had played and you're like, we're going to play this like a co-op, where we're going to let one, we're going to just go for these. I don't think you could do it in faster than 6 or 7 games, and almost every group has taken 15 or 16 when they're not optimizing.
That's awesome.
So, does that answer your question? It's kind of a hard question.
No, because, I mean, it's just, it answers it, because when I look at games, like all of your games and like time stories and stuff, I look at it from like a mechanics perspective, and I'm like, how does a person sit down and simply go, these are all the moving parts that I want? But like you're saying, it comes from more like you're thinking, oh, I think this would be cool, and then you find a way to make that work, and then you tool it in, and then you kind of workshop it.
You workshop. You revisit it from different angles. You're like, oh, I want ships to be able to fight each other, right? So I'm going to need ship combat rules. And you're like, I want history to be recorded. Oh, I want a moment where this happens. And I just keep, every time I get stuck in one, I just revisit the other, and it's just this iterative process that I think is a little bit different from other games right now, although Time Stories is certainly doing it, and I know other legacy games are coming out, where you just kind of keep hitting it from different vectors and keep workshopping it until it gels into something cohesive, that it doesn't feel like you've got a pile of mechanics and a pile of story ideas, and that just takes extra time.
So did you ever dream or expect to have the response that you've had with legacy games? Risk Legacy was huge, and like people like loved Risk Legacy, but then Pandemic Legacy has like rocketed up to like the #1 game. Tons and tons and tons of 10 rankings on Board Game Geek.
Yeah, I think that was January 1st, and it's May 10th. Yeah. I'm starting to understand that happened. Right, like I've been starting a new business, and like this was climbing up. I'm like, that's good, but I got to finish SeaFall, right? And then I finished SeaFall. I'm like, that's good. Now I got to get to the stuff that I've been late on, right? And I'm working on Chronicles, which is this big game. It was like head down, New England Puritan, like hit a home run, just tip, don't even tip your cap, just run around the bases and get back into the dugout and think about your next. I'm a big baseball guy. Think about your next at bat, right? And I think it was today or maybe yesterday. I was just walking, and I'm like, wait, I designed the #1 game on Board Game Geek? I was like, well, that's kind of cool, right? But like, but it's just starting to sort of trickle in. I'm just slowing down to do it. I'm floored. I'm honored. I'm touched. I look at the other games on that list and I go, yeah, but I played those games, and those seem like really hard games to make, and these like masterpieces that I never would have thought of. I would not even know how to start doing it. So to be even in the top 20 is an honor for me, and to end up at the top, I'm like, wait, what happened here? Yeah, like I haven't settled in. It's amazing, and I think as time goes on, I will start to sort of integrate it and realize it, and I'll probably just start shouting with my arms up in my office by myself one morning when it finally hits me. But I did not expect anything like this.
What did you and Matt do when it first like broke into the #1 and finally kicked Twilight Struggle out?
Well, we could see it coming, right? Like it was going up the list,
and there was a lot of people trying to stop it, which is crazy. We had a podcast where we actually talked about that.
Yeah, it's like that's the internet. What are you gonna do, right? It's like can't do much about it. Like I wish that people who didn't like something said I don't like it, and then just not buy it. And I wish that people who liked it said I like it. I didn't wish it became a cultural war of votes and counter votes and everything. So we could see it kind of going up, and I said it's not going to hit #1. Matt's like, I think it's trending to #1. I'm like,
he's like running the numbers.
Yeah, I'm like, have you seen these games up there? I'm like, it's just not. It's going to hit a ceiling, and so. I'm not usually a gambling guy, but I said, okay, I'm going to name a rank, and you have to pick the over and the under. And I think I picked like 6.5, right? And so he has to decide whether it was going to crack that. It was going to, and he picked I don't know how you do it. He picked that it would be better than it, right? And it would be better. It would be somewhere in 1 through 6 by New Year's Day. And I said, okay, you're on a bottle of wine. Right. And then it's the best bottle of wine I've lost, especially since I haven't paid him yet. So like it's because he lives on the other side of the country. So I lost a bottle of wine in that, and I woke up New Year's Day and I had something like 80 Twitter notifications. So I was like,
awesome.
Okay, I think I know what happened. And it was a good feeling. It was this weird thing. I turned 46 this year. And so I was kind of like seeing my life as like, this is the beginning of 46 through 60, which is really sort of sobering as a grown-up. Like I'm getting into that elder statesman, gray hair, sort of, veteran in the industry. I'm like, well, that's not a bad way to start this section of your life.
Yeah.
Right. That makes up for a little bit for getting older. I don't get it, I guess, is the bottom line. But when I do get it, it feels amazing, and I can't believe it happened to me.
At least you'll leave a legacy, pun intended.
There we go. I can't use that word anymore.
Oh, gotcha.
No, you can, but people are like, oh, so the legacy, and people go, aha! And I go, all right. So.
That's awesome. So, why did you choose Risk and Pandemic for platforms for the legacy games?
Well, Risk because it was the only thing. Well, when I brought out the idea to do Risk Legacy, it was because there were a number of our beloved hobby games that were starting to eke their way into Target at the time, which finally got the attention of Hasbro management or some people in Hasbro who aren't gamers, who had been in the mass market, right? And all of a sudden they're like, hey, some of these games that the designers play are starting to go mass market. Should we be doing something about this? And so they were kind of fishing around for a game that might have some more teeth than the usual things. And I was like, I got one, and I did this impassioned presentation. I mean, it involved like leather jackets and actions have consequences and tattoo culture and
That's awesome.
and Banksy, the graffiti artist, and
That's
you know,
awesome.
and it was like, and I said, and I ended it, and I said, we always talk about ourselves as game changers, but if you really want to be a game changer, you have to be able to change the game. It was like this marketing drop the mic sort of moment. And the guy who was running Hasbro Games at the time said, okay, I didn't get everything you just said, but what I got I think is really cool and different, and I think you're onto something interesting, and I want you to run with it. And he looked around the room and gave sort of his like edict as a president. He said, and I don't want you to allow it to be Hasbroized. Do what you want to do and don't compromise your vision because someone else thinks that it's not business as usual. Do your own thing. And he gave me like this shield that I had to run on, that I could run under and make it happen. And it never would have happened without him. And then he, through to corporate politics, ended up, getting sort of forced out before the game was finished. And then I had to go like deep cover and hide it from the new management. And there's a whole story in there. So
That's crazy.
and I picked Pandemic because basically they asked me.
Gotcha.
I mean, they said, hey, would you like to, Matt, I got in touch with Matt, heard he was looking for it. He said, I played Risk Legacy. I think it was cool. Would you like to do a Pandemic Legacy? And I was like, hell yeah. And I said, I got to tell you
Pandemic,
though.
that's a good game.
Yeah, I said, I've heard of that. And I said, I thought about it. I'm not quite sure how to do a co-op because the game can end up beating up the people and we would have no knowledge, like in Risk Legacy, that there's some sense that the players will kind of self-balance as this thing goes down and gets further from our field of view. Not to know how to do with a co-op. He's like, well, let's talk about it and see if we can kind of figure it out. And thank God that I didn't do something dumb like, nah, it's not workable, right? Instead, I was just like, well, golly gee, Matt Leacock wants to do a game with me. And so it started working on it, and we kind of found an answer pretty soon, or felt comfortable we would find an answer. And then we started working on it, and I'm like, oh, I think this would be pretty cool. And Matt had he had a big chunk of the story sort of already mapped out, like at least the first half, or at a very top level. And it changed a lot. But he's like, it's kind of this happens and this happens. And like he started telling me, I'm like, oh, we got to make this. This sounds fun. And then it took us about 14 months. So
That's awesome.
It's not bad at all.
Well, we started with Pandemic.
Right.
We're like, okay, game one is Pandemic, but with these like two things. Right? So when you already start
But
with
halfway through,
When you start with the bones.
when you start with a game that has been tested to work, it makes it a lot easier.
that's awesome. If you had free reign and the proper licensing to make any game into a legacy game, what would it be?
Other than SeaFall?
Other than SeaFall.
You want a license, right? Is that what you're looking for?
I mean, no, just anything. Like, I want to know what Rob Daviau thinks would be crazy.
Well,
Even if you didn't have to design it, you could just play it that somebody else did all the work.
that's more interesting. SeaFall is my passion project. I made this for my D&D loving 12-year-old self.
Nice.
Right? Like, I didn't realize it till after. I'm like, this is what if I had been like in 8th grade or freshman in high school with my friends, instead of playing D&D at night, we would have played SeaFall every night, like during the summer. Like, this is a little love letter to my inner child. So right now that is my answer. But if I had to play, oh gosh, I don't know. I was thinking about this. I'm a big comic book fan. I haven't done anything comic booky, right?
Yeah.
So, but the nature of comic books is they don't end. I mean, some of them do. Like you have like a Watchmen series or a mini series or Lock and Key or something like that, and has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It would be interesting to be able to do something that felt like it was ripped from a comic. Nice. But
So Marvel or DC?
I grew up with a lot of Marvel. So, I'm not even gonna say beggars can't be choosers. If either one of them came to me, I'm like,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, of course, yeah, that's fine. Actually, as I get older, I realize that I get more interested in things that as a kid I was like not interested. For example, if someone came to me and wanted to do a golden age like Justice Society comic,
Yeah.
that might be more interesting to me right now than the Avengers, just because that's been kind of mined to death. But you get the old Flash with the Mercury helmet and stuff like that, and I'm like, and the Sandman and all these things. Like, this is just like a fun new era to play. And as I get older, I want to mash up genres a lot more and do different things.
That's awesome. So I know you do a lot of like consulting for legacy games. Everybody knows Rob Daviau is the legacy guy.
Yep.
Do you think we'll see a lot more of this style of like legacy games coming down the pipeline?
Well, I thought after Risk Legacy, and it got some good reviews. I'm like, well, someone's going to do this, and that'll be cool because I can see what they could do with it, and then I'll play it. And then at the time, I was thinking, like, well, then I'll know that I did something interesting enough that someone else wanted to follow on, right? Like, that was the sense of sort of, passing something on or adding to the ideas of game design. But then no one did. And I still don't know exactly why. I suspect a lot of people tried and went, well, this is a pain.
This is hard work. Really hard work.
They're like, this is dumb. I can go make 4 games, right? And the time it takes me to do this. And then Pandemic came out and obviously has had success. So I know that other people now are like, okay, now I'm making one.
It's worth the tons of work it makes.
Yeah.
If it makes it to number one on Board Game Geek.
It's all the eggs in one basket, right? I'll do a game, and I hope it's not SeaFall, but I'll do a game that will just, or someone will do a legacy game that will just tank. And you've spent so much time and energy putting into it that you'll go, oh, okay, well, I got to be careful now. I'd rather do like 3 or 4 games and spread my upside
I'll keep you
downside.
afloat on SeaFall. You'll be fine.
Okay, thank you.
He'll buy 15 more boards.
I probably will.
You're my hero. So I know some are coming out. I know 2 that I can't talk about. Well, then there's this Chronicles Games, which is like that I'm helping with, which is like a cousin of a legacy game. And then I know Gloomhaven's coming out, which kind of is a legacy game. And Jamie Stegmaier's doing a legacy game. And actually, the Pathfinder Adventure card game, Mike Selinker told me, was inspired by Risk Legacy.
Right.
Right, it's not
on the cards.
You write on the cards, and it has like this sort of continuing campaign. He's like, I didn't do it exactly how you did it, but he thought like, oh, I see. We can get away with sort of like game over game campaign stuff, like a role playing game. Cool. And he kind of mapped it to that. So yeah, I expect some stuff to come out. Some will be fantastic. Some will be fine. Some will do things that I'll be like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Like, that's so cool. You did, like, it's only my head. You, like, another brain made it go in a different direction. Some will be awful. Some will be cash grabs. And either it will become part of the toolbox, like a deck builder or worker placement, or everyone will get really tired of it. And then I'll have, there'll be no more of them, and that'll be fine.
So I'm a really big fan of like the Time Stories model, where it's not a legacy game, but it's still very story driven, and it's got even way less plays that you can play through compared to like Pandemic or SeaFall or anything like that. You play through a story once and it's done.
Yeah, you probably play 3, maybe 4 games before it's chewed up.
Yeah. And every time we've played, we just play those in one sitting. We just go.
I've only played the first 2. I've loved both of them, and I did them both in the same night. And I have the third one, and I'm waiting for that magic time where it's my wife, who's a gamer, and my kids, who are teenagers, and we just have like 4 hours to do it, and that has not materialized in the past month.
Yeah, it's the exact same situation we're waiting on.
Yeah.
I'm a super huge fan of like the huge, like deep storytelling thing. I feel like games that have an ending like can lead to like deeper storytelling. So I'm definitely excited to see the industry going in like that sort of direction, because it seems awesome.
That's my take is I can tell you a better story if it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Mm-hmm. But the downside is it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Right? So do you want a better experience with an ending, or do you want to have more infinite replayability? Even though you're not going to play it an infinite amount of times, you have the possibility of doing it. And I'll go back to TV shows and comics do this. If a comic is a 12-issue series, it often is a better story than an ongoing series, because you can just plot it out. And TV shows that are, okay, we're going to have 7 seasons and it's going to have an ending, are often better than, okay, it's going to be an ongoing procedural. in terms of how much story it can deliver. It may not be like I can go watch a CSI and get into it and have a good time, but if I dropped into the middle of The Good Wife, which I've never seen, I'd be lost completely. So, one is more of a commitment, but perhaps more rewarding, and the other one is something that's more casual and you drop in and drop out. And games have always been the casual. Everything is its own entity. And now there's this little bit of sense of, oh, maybe we can put an episodic arc around it. And I know I've pissed a lot of people off with that.
I think it's worth it. I think it's awesome. There's a ton of people that complain about the replayability aspect of it, but like realistically, like with 15 games, like I have a lot of games that I haven't played 15 times. That I probably spent more money on. So.
Yeah, no, but I get it, because what it is I made a decision for them, right? If you have a game that you haven't played that often, you still could play it 2,000 times. It's your call. And what I'm saying is, no. As a designer, I'm going to make that decision for you, and that's a big shift in mindset. And some people don't want to do that, and that's fine. I liken legacy games to going to a concert. Right, you buy a ticket, you go on a ride, and then it's over. And if you want to go back, you got to buy a ticket for the next day. And if you're halfway through and you don't like it, your ticket's now useless. And some people don't want to go to a concert; they want to buy. It's outdated because I'm old, like a CD, right, or an album. They want the exact same thing every time, and they can play it, as much as they want. And neither is right, and neither is it wrong. But in this case, with what I did with Legacy, it's brand new, so it feels disruptive.
Personally, to me, I feel like going to see the concert and having the experience of that, even though it's only one time, is going to be a lot better than just listening to a CD on the couch by yourself.
Yeah, that's the thing is, I don't want every game to be a legacy game. I think that would be a disaster. But I do like the idea of the people like saying, oh, we've got this really cool narrative game. Oh, maybe it should be a legacy game. Could we get more out of it by making it just like 12 games and we're done? Than by sort of not quite telling a story but making it infinitely replayable. I like that that's an option right now, at least for a year or two, and hopefully longer, but we'll see.
That's awesome. So what motivates you to create board games?
Other than the looming college payments for my daughter. I don't know. I still like it, right? It's a mix between storytelling and math. There's something very primal. I spend a lot of time today, hand cutting things. It's manufactured. It's not pixels. I have nothing against digital stuff, but like there's something, how much can you squeeze out of pieces of cardboard, right? And a couple of pieces of plastic? How much interest can you get out of it? I don't need a big staff to do it. I don't need a big budget to do it. Some days I can be a mathematician. A lot of days I'm in spreadsheets. Some days I'm writing narrative. Like it manages to encompass a lot of different parts of my brain in one industry. And I just think that's like just a wonderful place to be. And the fact that I get to work for Parker Brothers, I got to work for Milton Bradley. Near the end of my career at Hasbro, I ran their copywriting department, which is writing, not patents for people. I'm like, I can look back and be like, I was the charge of all the rules coming out of Parker Brothers and Milton Bradley for a year in my life. Like, this just feels amazing. Like that this is why I can't use the word legacy, right? That I feel like I'm part of this heritage going back 150 and 160 years. And I'm in the middle of it now, so it doesn't feel anything like, well, getting up the next day and I got some emails to answer. And hopefully when I look back at the body of my work and sort of a continuation of what people have done before with games, that feels like I've done something interesting. I was going to be in television. I was thinking about being in comic books. I've always just wanted to tell stories and kind of be like a pop culture storyteller, and this is where I ended up.
That's awesome. So, what is your current favorite tabletop game?
I never answer that question. My current favorite tabletop game is playing first edition Dungeons and Dragons with my brother and my friends in 1982 in my basement, and it will never be topped.
That's awesome. Like that is I feel like so many of these people we have on our show and that we talk about and that we have like a kindred in like games that are similar, like they like the same sort of games that we do. A lot of it goes back to like role playing, like these role playing games, tabletop role playing games, playing your characters, all the different stuff just leads into like loving thematic board games. So
yeah, no, I discovered role-playing games and comic books at the same week when I went off to summer camp when I was 11 years old.
That's awesome.
And that's basically why I'm here today talking to you. And being a DM, well, playing a role-playing game in general, being a DM, and certainly doing this with first edition D&D, which is just a mess of rules, and I mean that in the best way. I'm still a fan of it. Made me have to be a game designer. You're adjudicating on the fly. You're coming up with magic items. You're creating monsters. You're creating adventures. You're trying to keep everyone interested. You're trying to make sure that everyone has something to do. Oh, the thief doesn't have something to do. Oh, magic user. The magic user is wounded, so I can't throw another combat. And just like having to think on your feet, that's exactly what made me a game designer. I was 13 or 14, and I went off to a local game convention and was like running Marvel superhero role-playing as a DM where people would pay money to be in my games at like 13. And I just thought that's what everyone did.
That's crazy.
I don't think that's the case when I look back on it now. And so like I have just been, so when people say what's my favorite tabletop game, I'm like, that's it. Like I would ride my bike to my friend's house at 8 in the morning and, didn't even have to think about what was for lunch because his mom would make it and we would play role-playing games until I had to go home again. Like nothing is going to top that.
It's funny because I try to ask every single guest that comes on the show like that question, and I always feel like when they say D&D, they said the right answer. Is that wrong?
No, it's just, I think there's a whole generation of people, myself included, who just happen to be in that magic place. Like we were just old enough to play it and just young enough that we weren't distracted by girls and cars and music. Like we were just in this little golden age where it could sort of seep into us and like really change the way that we thought about creativity in games. And so now, just by the way things work, it's 35 years later. So we've all managed to grow up and get careers and kind of make our mark. So I'm not surprised. I'd be very interested to see what the answer is in 20 more years, right? Is it going to be Minecraft? Is it going to be Zelda? What is it? Is it going to be HeroScape? Yeah, I hope so. Right? Like,
that's awesome. Yeah, I always like tell people I didn't play like D&D when I was a kid. I played Gamma World, which is like the mutant version of it.
Yeah.
But I was talking about it like a couple weeks ago that when I was a kid, my parents were pretty conservative, so they like didn't let us play Dungeons and Dragons. But me and one of my friends were all like, "Hey, let's make like a fantasy version of Gamma World." Like, and me and my friend were trying to like we're like, why hasn't anyone ever thought of this before? We're gonna have like fairies and like goblins and like elves and stuff. How are we the first people to ever think about this? But little did we know that D&D was like a huge thing. So I just think remembering back on that, like me and my friend were like scratching out papers, like, okay, the dagger is gonna be a D4. Like we're so smart.
Oh yeah, what else would a dagger be?
So
D3 against large creatures. If you're going back to first edition, sorry, all those tables are still in my head.
That's awesome. So, is there anything else you would like to promote or talk about, Rob?
Well, I want to thank you actually for having me on the show. I appreciate it. SeaFall pre-orders, that's really where my focus is these days. People have been very nice with Pandemic Legacy Season 1. We don't have anything to talk about for Season 2 yet. I will be talking more about the Chronicles series that I'm working on as the months go along, probably in the fall. And I have a couple non-legacy games that I finally have the brain space to get to. Like they've been on the back burner and moving too slowly, and I've moved them up to the front in the past couple weeks. So I will be talking about those as the summer goes on. So no, if what I'm saying about adventure and swashbuckling and the high seas and running your own province, and if you win the SeaFall campaign, you become the emperor and reunite the provinces and rule over the world, you will have that forever. Awesome. And if that sounds interesting, then go to plaidhatgames.com and read the rule book. And if you like it, then pre-order it. And if you do, I will shake your hand and thank you when you introduce yourself to me.
And I'm sure the rule book has all those little spaces where you can add more rules in.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Coming up to that point, realizing I don't have to put all the rules in the rule book. I was like, what? Right? Like, it's all worked out, but I had no idea it was going to work.
So I'll give you an out. You don't have to like say anything if you don't know anything or like don't want to. But any info on the Betrayal at House on the Hill expansion? You can just say NDA if you want to.
Well, no, I am under NDA, so I'm not going to say anything that's not public. It's just that's done by Lone Shark Games, which is Mike Selinker. That game had a lot of different people touch it in the first version. Bruce Glasgow, Dr. Bruce Glasgow, is the original inventor. And then it landed on my desk at Hasbro, and I spent about a year and a half. And I really don't know how to credit myself. I'm not the inventor. He was the guy who came up with the idea, and it's brilliant. But I really made the game play as it plays now. Like the rules and the combat system and the fact that there's a trader book and a survivor's guide being two separate things, and a lot of the stories and a lot of the items were honed. So I was either a second designer or an early developer, and then it went to Mike Selinker, who was then with Wizards of the Coast, and they did final development. I mean, God bless them. They tried to balance it as best they could, but that's just impossible. Mike's been gone from Wizards of the Coast for like 15 years, a little less, 12 years. And, he had the great idea of doing an expansion. He contacted a bunch of people, myself included. I did do a haunt in it, but I was also in a position to kind of get under the hood a little bit and do some more cards and a little bit more like design thinking. Unfortunately, it's right when SeaFall was wrapping up, so I did not spend as much time as I would like. I kind of just threw a whole bunch of things into a Google sheet, and then Mike and the people at Lone Shark turned that into actual ideas. So I was like, I'm not going to not participate in this, but here's like a Saturday morning, like here's a bunch of ideas. That's all the time I have. And then kind of ran away. But I don't know much more than that, and I don't think I violated my NDA.
So I know with the trailer they show just all this like list of tons of designers. So just designers have like their own like haunt that they worked on for the most part, pretty much.
I believe so. Hopefully that's not something I'm not supposed to say, but they're...
I mean, it's pretty inferred by like the fact that there's just tons of names, because when they first showed the trailer, they didn't even say what it was.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just like, I saw your name in there. I'm like, it's Betrayal at House on the Hill. I know it. So.
There were people, and I know some people got involved with more sort of the underlying mechanics and cards. I was one of them, and other people just did suggestions for haunts, and other people did haunts, and I actually don't know how it all shook out. I don't know what's public about like what's in the box. I played it at PAX East, obviously, because I could, but I don't know if like it was public to press, so I'm just gonna call it right there.
Sounds good. Well, super exciting for that. Check that out at Halloween time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yes, thank you very much.
It out. We stream these at Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Check us out at youtube.com/C/Epic Gaming Night. Make sure to hit us up on Twitter and Instagram at Epic Gaming Night. Rob, where can they find you?
You can find me. You can Twitter. It's at Rob Daviau, and since no one can spell that, it's ROBDAVIAU. You can go to my website, which is robdaviau.com. And it's basically just a list of games that I've done. It has some contact information, but mostly Twitter is what I use for my public gaming contacts.
Awesome. And for SeaFall again, check out plaidhatgames.com/store for that pre-order. But yes, so thanks so much for coming on, Rob. It was a blast.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome.
And now the outro music plays.
Right.
Rob's not going to do awkward stuff.
I'm not going to do awkward stuff.
Rob's not doing awkward stuff. So
should I do awkward stuff? Who does the awkward stuff?
Absolutely.
I remember you tweeted one time like, "Hey, looking for playtesters for SeaFall."
Yeah.
You were like, "I've got a couple of hours. I need some playtesters." And I was like, I tweeted you back. I was like, "Oh my gosh, where are you at? I'm on my way." And I think you said Massachusetts.
Yeah.
I think it was, and I was like,
that's where I live, so probably.
Yeah. I was like, oh, okay.
You know what? Consider yourself lucky in the sense that like there was nothing wrong with it, but you're going to get a better experience just playing it fresh. Yeah. I always feel really grateful for playtesters who are like, hey, let me play something kind of shitty and broken.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thanks everybody who checked us out on the stream. I'm going to turn the stream off now, and make sure to follow us and subscribe to us on YouTube. We'll see you guys next time.